Mines, drone boats and cyber attacks. Now Iran's supreme leader pledges to open a new front in the war. In his first public comments, Mujtaba Khamenei said he would keep the Strait of Hormuz shut to put pressure on the global economy. And after even more ship attacks, the US Treasury Secretary tells Sky News a coalition of countries will escort vessels through as soon as possible.
I listened to you on the...
The President wants you. Sorry, the President wants you very much.
Oh, okay. Okay. No problem at all. See you shortly, Mr. Secretary.
Well, that was the dramatic moment. Scott Bessent was summoned to the Situation Room by Donald Trump. More on that coming up. Plus, after he pledged no more wars, we'll find out what the US president's supporters make of his broken promise. And drone strikes and visa bans. We'll hear from a Sudanese student who's being prevented from studying at Oxford University. That's all coming up on The World with me, Jonathan Samuels. Hello, a very good evening. My question for today: has Washington underestimated Iran? This week, Donald Trump described the war as a short excursion, but then we heard the apparent message of defiance from the new supreme leader. And we saw images like this overnight: ships and fuel facilities on fire, specifically targeted to inflict global economic pain. So when Sky presenter Will Frost sat down with the US Treasury Secretary, he challenged him about what America was doing to get vessels moving through a key shipping lane. Scott Bessent promised military escorts in the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible, a pledge apparently supported by the UK.
There are additional options we're starting to consider that we could deploy alongside allies. But, you know, in the end, the best thing for reopening the straits, restarting the shipping, is a de-escalation of the conflict.
That's Defence Secretary John Healey. The US and the UK know they need to act fast as oil prices are surging again and Iran is diversifying. We've seen cyber attacks and drone boats and suggestions of sea mines. Even so, the White House is continuing to boast about its military success and released this video on social media today. We'll discuss the fracturing of Donald Trump's base with a popular MAGA commentator. That's coming up. But first, I want to show you the moments we caught on camera, the US Treasury Secretary being summoned to the Situation Room by President Trump. Take a look.
I listened to you on the...
The President wants you. Sorry, the President wants you very much.
Oh, okay. Okay. No problem at all. See you shortly, Mr. Secretary.
You can work that in.
Mr. Secretary, I have to say, it's a first, I'm sure a last as well, that an interviewee's been pulled away to go to the Situation Room. How was the President? Was he stressed?
No, the President is in great spirits. The Iranian mission is proceeding well ahead of schedule.
Well, let's cross to Washington and bring in Wilf. It was a dramatic moment, Wilf. I wonder if you got any more sense of the atmosphere inside the Situation Room. And also, I wonder if there was a sense of concern in Washington about the spiralling cost of this war.
Well, the cost we came to, and I did ask him specifically how much the war's cost so far, and he said $11 billion to date. I also asked him if he had a number in mind that would trigger him to tell President Trump, these costs are escalating too much, we can't afford it. And he said to that, absolutely not. And I think what you get from that and from the details I drew from him as he'd returned after what was about a 2-hour delay as he got drawn to the Situation Room with President Trump, I think you get the sense that they are committed to finding out ways that they might be able to offset the economic impact of this war, as opposed to seeking what we just heard from John Healey there, a route to backtrack, a route to de-escalation. I think they're exploring what other tools are there for us to continue this war, but limit the economic market impact. And here's a taste of the discussion I had with the US Treasury Secretary immediately after he'd returned from the Situation Room with President Trump.
Are you starting to think, if this does keep persisting as it is, that the Navy has to go into the Strait of Hormuz to help ships get through, which would have a big effect on
look, that was always in our planning, that there's the chance that U.S. Navy or perhaps an international coalition will be escorting oil tankers through. There are, in fact, tankers coming through now. Iranian tankers, I believe some Chinese flag tankers have come through. So we know that they have not mined the straits.
And was that what you were just discussing in the Situation Room?
We were discussing a plethora of things.
And is it your belief that the volume of ships going through the Strait of Hormuz will be improving immediately from now?
It is my belief that as soon as it is militarily possible, the U.S. Navy, perhaps with an international coalition, will be escorting vessels through.
And that came up just now in the Situation Room.
Your words, not mine. But again,
are we days away from that?
We've been planning for this. We've done scenario analysis for months, for weeks, leading into this. So,
but it's a prospect in the coming days, then.
It is a prospect as soon as we have complete control of the skies and are degrading their. They have no Air Force. The Navy is sunk, literally and figuratively, and the munitions factories, the rebuilding capabilities for the missiles, completely degraded. So as soon as it is possible for to ensure safe passage, we will do it. And again, with the DFC insurance product, this was something that we had already anticipated, and because Lloyd's does call force majeure and the policies drop away. So we think that $20 billion in insurance for tankers going into and out of the Gulf will be enough to ensure a circular insurance program.
Tons more to get to on your policy long term. A couple more in this area, if I may. What is the running cost at the moment of this war? $1 billion a day? $10 billion a day?
Again, I'm not keeping the running costs because in the U.S. we separate Treasury from O&B, so that's why I'm the Treasury Secretary, not the Finance Minister.
Ballpark, though.
Well, a number came out today. In the public number that was released today was about $11 billion thus far.
Thus far, right, over a couple of weeks, and how long, as you look long term at America's finances, how long are you planning for this conflict to continue for?
Again, that $11 billion is a lot of money, but we have cushions built in, and it's not something that we have to worry about over this horizon.
There's no chance you could be knocking on the president's door to say we have to pause on this, we can't afford it.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. What we've seen last year was continued and increasing foreign interest in U.S. Treasuries. U.S. Treasuries had their best year since 2022, and we were the only G7 bond market with lower yields last year on the 10-year.
Let's move on to the special relationship and developments there. We've touched on this already. You've lived in the UK before for many years, still go back there a lot. President Trump said last week he's not happy with the UK. He said Keir Starmer is no Winston Churchill. You were speaking about that and what he said in the Oval Office about Spain and the UK last week. And you said that Spain had put American lives at risk. Did Keir Starmer do the same?
Again, that we delayed being able to fully implement the military plan, and I think that the main concern was the use of base Diego Garcia, and the US B-2s had to do a 37-hour round trip rather than, I think it's about a 3.5 hour round trip. So, constantly refueling over. So, I think any delay, causes an increase in risk. And again, President Trump is the commander-in-chief of the U.S. forces. And, again, being in the Situation Room with him, that he so solemnly takes the leadership role in terms of his commitment to maintaining the lives of our service people, that anything that upsets him. And I think that's what got the very strong reaction.
But just to clarify, you said of the Spanish, anything that slows down our ability to engage puts American lives at risk. The Spanish put American lives at risk. So did the UK do that too?
I think we have a great historical relationship, and I think we'll get it back on track.
How unhappy is President Trump with Prime Minister Starmer right now?
Belatedly, the Prime Minister offered to put resources in the region. I believe that there are resources in the region, and we have a long-term relationship. There will be some bumps in the road. I think we will eventually get back on track.
Have you heard any discussions of the King and Queen's visit due in the spring being cancelled?
Not at all.
Is America out over its skis in the Middle East right now?
Absolutely not. As I said, we are every day we are moving ahead of plan, and Iran is degraded. There was a message from the bunker from the new Ayatollah. We haven't seen him, so let's see if we see him.
You suggesting he's no longer alive?
Is he compos mentis? Is he injured? Is he, is he under threat from the other members of the regime?
Do you think regime change is on the cards in the days ahead then?
Again, our goals are the three that I talked about. But once these things go in motion, you never know what's going to happen. They take on a life of their own beneath the surface.
And Wilf, did you get the sense that the administration is managing to steady the markets at all?
Well, I think you just have to look at the markets to know the answer to that is no. A day where Brent oil is back above $100, it rose 10%, and as a result, equity markets obviously sold off over 1% here in the United States, which, of course, for a single day is quite a big move. I do think it's significant that we heard him talking there about the aim, possibly in days, for the Navy to escort vessels through the Strait of Hormuz, fresh after being in the Situation Room with President Trump, but also just one day, of course, after it was announced that G7 countries would release an enormous amount of oil from strategic petroleum reserves. Clearly, for today at least, that announcement yesterday didn't ease pressures on the oil prices, and it looks like they're now moving to what the next tactic could be to try and ease the pressure on markets. But I do think the other point here is significant. Whether we're talking about pressures from the oil price, pressures on inflation, the overall cost of it, whether the war aims are being achieved or not, there was no sense there that they're about to take their foot off the gas. They're going to try new tactics, perhaps, to try and ease the economic knock-on effects, but not that they're going to back down. But the other thing that I think really stood out there was that he said he wants to get the special relationship back on track. I wasn't expecting that. Based on what he said towards Pedro Sanchez, the Spanish Prime Minister, just a week ago, I thought he was going to come in, hit them hard, but there was a very clear indication there, despite multiple chances I gave him there to criticize Keir Starmer, that he didn't really want to do so explicitly. And I would imagine the Prime Minister, who's taken a tough stand, of course, against this action and the US administration in the last week, will be relatively pleased about that. OK, Wilf, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Now, I want to bring you some more details of what Iran's supreme leader said in his first public comments since he was appointed. In a statement read out on state TV, Mojtaba Khamenei claimed a policy of friendship with Iran's neighbours despite continued strikes. We'll have a look at this. These are the attacks carried out by Iran and Hezbollah on land and on sea since midnight yesterday. Strikes on Israel, Oman, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, on ships off the coast of Iraq and in Bahrain. This large fire was caused when fuel tanks were struck at a facility northeast of the capital, Manama. Lisa Holland has this report.
Even as an American-owned oil tanker burned off the coast of Iraq, it became clear that Iran's new supreme leader plans to double down on the economic pain unleashed by his regime in order to get the upper hand in this war. Another ship ablaze, also off Iraq, as the vital oil shipping lane, the Strait of Hormuz, was effectively shut down by Iranian attacks. Fuel tanks on fire in Bahrain. For all this to stop, said Mojtaba Khamenei, American troops must be kicked out of their bases by countries across the Middle East.
They have to expel the Americans. They have to expel these foreigners and close down the bases, because by now they must have understood that the bases are not useful for their security.
And the supreme leader warned Iran is planning more ways to pressurize its enemies.
Certainly, the tool of closing the Strait of Hormuz must continue to be used. Studies have also been conducted on opening other fronts in which the enemy has little experience and would be highly vulnerable.
The message from Mojtaba Khamenei, read out on state television, failed to show the supreme leader in person and raised more questions about the gravity of his injuries after he survived a missile attack on the first day of the war, which killed his wife and father. Writing on Truth Social, there was no backing down by Donald Trump, who said, "The United States is the largest oil producer in the world by far. So when oil prices go up, we make a lot of money. But of far greater interest and importance to me as president is stopping an evil empire, Iran, from having nuclear weapons and destroying the Middle East, and indeed the world. I won't ever let that happen." The war is being fought on multiple fronts across the region by Iran and its proxies. Israel launching prolific attacks against the Iranian-backed Hezbollah in the very heart of the Lebanese capital, Beirut. And Hezbollah launching its largest number of missiles in one night across the border into northern Israel. So it's unlikely the sirens here and across the region will fall silent anytime soon. And the Israeli jets we filmed over Jerusalem will continue their bombing raids with no sign of any side seeking de-escalation. Lisa Holland, Sky News, Jerusalem.
Missile or drone strikes have been recorded against 18 ships in the region since the war began, which explains the volatility in oil prices. Our data and economics editor, Ed Conway, has been assessing the likely impact on inflation.
It is something of an economic rollercoaster here. Let's just give you the update of some of the latest news here in the Persian Gulf. Have a look here. This is just the past 24 hours. So we have two oil tankers that were set ablaze in Iraqi waters just in the north of the Gulf there. You've got down in just outside of Dubai, a container ship, a Chinese container ship, which rather hoped that it wasn't going to be attacked, has been attacked. That's just in Jebel Ali, so that's the biggest port in the region in Dubai. Kuwait airport struck by drones, similar episodes in Bahrain as well. And perhaps most striking of all, most concerning for many people, is Salalah here, just in the south of Oman, outside of the Persian Gulf. So look, outside of the Persian Gulf, that facility there has been attacked, raising questions about how safe this area is going to be from Iranian or proxy attacks. And all the while, that big issue is the fact that the Strait of Hormuz, this neck, this choke point through which all of the shipping has previously gone, is effectively closed to most traffic, and the new supreme leader says it's going to stay closed, and all of that has an impact on the oil price. And the oil price has been somewhat bolstered, well, I mean, have a look at the chart in a second, by the release of an unprecedented amount of oil from the strategic reserve of a lot of the world's richest countries. 400 million barrels of oil is what they're promising. That's bigger than Ukraine in 2022, bigger than Libya, bigger than Katrina, bigger than the first Gulf War. A lot of it coming from the US, so 172 million barrels coming from the US. But if you look at the levels of storage that the US has, so this is their strategic petroleum reserve, and you can see the points in history. There's the Gulf War there, you can see Hurricane Katrina there, you can see Libya, you can see the Russian-Ukraine conflict. What's interesting about this is, look, the level of US stockpiles is close to a historic low. We've rarely seen it as low as it is right now, which is of some concern given we are going into a serious position for the energy market. Have a look at what oil prices are doing in response to this. So it's been a roller coaster, as I said. It went up very sharply on Monday, came down when Donald Trump said the war was complete, but has been kind of ticking along there. And since the IEA said they were pumping out lots more oil, look at what happened. Actually, oil prices have gone up instead of going down. People are still concerned. And that concern is borne out by the fact that when you look at the potential economic implications of higher oil prices and higher gas prices, they are quite severe, but they are quite kind of varied. So the UK, which this year was expected to have about 2% inflation, according to the National Institute for Economic and Social Research, it's likely to be closer to 3%, because this is showing you the difference. So that's about 1 percentage point extra, takes it up to about 3%. But for someone like Canada, you're talking about, that only has 5% oil imports. It's a bigger oil exporter, so it's not as big an impact. Whereas for China, with 12% oil imports, it is a far bigger impact. And so you get this sense of how different countries all around the world are seeing different impacts from what's happening in Iran, and are likely to see different impacts in the coming weeks.
Ed Conway reporting. Now, Joe Rogan says America feels betrayed. Tucker Carlson described the attack on Iran as absolutely disgusting and evil. Two prominent supporters of the US president who've been vocal in their criticism. That's because Donald Trump pledged to end wars and not to start them. Well, since the first American missile struck, there have been over 1,300 recorded deaths inside Iran, and in the rest of the region, 687 people have been killed in Lebanon, at least 15 killed in Iraq, 15 in Israel, 6 in the UAE and 2 in Bahrain. The number of deaths in Saudi Arabia remains at 2, and in Oman, only 1 death has been recorded. 7 US soldiers were killed after an attack on a military base in Kuwait. So, more than 2,000 deaths since February the 28th. But what do the president's supporters make of his war? Well, let's speak now to MAGA commentator and Turning Point Action official, Jack Posobiec. Nice to see you, Jack. You've been a very prominent person in the MAGA sphere. You've had some controversial views in the past, I think it's fair to say. But we want to focus on how this war has split the MAGA base, the supporters of Donald Trump. How do you feel the conflict is going?
Well, first of all, Donald Trump is a generational leader for the United States of America. There's no question about that. And as a generational leader, he's also a transformational leader. And so he's had to face these challenges head on as they come to him in office. MAGA as a movement is largely behind Trump, and poll after poll shows this. But there are elements of the wider 2024 coalition that came on, like Joe Rogan you mentioned earlier, that came on board to support Trump at the very end of the 2024 campaign. And like any coalition, you are going to have friction points. You are going to have differences of opinion on certain matters. And no question, when there's a matter of war, this is always something where there's going to be debate. So MAGA largely stands behind Trump. But yes, there are a number of independent commentators that have a difference of opinion.
Would you also say there's a generational divide as well between younger supporters and those of an older generation?
We are starting to see that. We see a generational split in MAGA, and this is something that my friend Charlie Kirk talked about a lot, whereby in the Gen Z MAGA, the college campus age individuals, which Charlie would talk about and talk to for about 4 hours at a time, they're not interested in foreign war. They're not interested in international intervention. They're on board with deportations. They want economic relief, but they are generally and largely opposed to foreign intervention, whereas as you go older, it skews towards more support for intervention.
Does it frustrate you somewhat that during the election campaign, Donald Trump very much said that he was against war, against going into the Middle East, and now he is going against his word?
Well, we haven't seen boots on the ground, and he talked about being against forever war. He talked about George W. Bush. In fact, he was the first Republican to really come out back in 2015 and oppose the Bush policies of the war in Iraq and the wars in Afghanistan, which were these massive on-the-ground wars. We haven't seen that thus far. We're only 2 weeks into this thing, and it's been a very successful military campaign thus far.
Are you concerned about the impact on the midterms if this war does drag on?
Well, there's always a concern when you're in politics. You want to make sure that you're on the winning side. I'm concerned also, by the way, that if this thing is successful, you could see a lot more support rallying towards President Trump, like the endeavor in Venezuela. I think the Venezuela model would absolutely be something that could work here, and a potential deal could be on the table.
But you did mention some of those big conservative names. We know the likes of Megyn Kelly, Matt Walsh, Tucker Carlson, we've already spoken about, have really condemned this war, haven't they, as a betrayal of those America First principles. They have millions of followers, and it's going to be quite hard to recover those followers, isn't it, who hang on every word?
Well, it may be, but again, everyone's got different followers. Everyone's certainly entitled to their own opinion. And the Charlie Kirk rule was always this, that when we have differences of opinion, when we have differences in the coalition, that we come together in debate, we have a good faith argument about that, and we describe what's best for the country going forward. And I think there's a lot of time between now and November still.
I suppose the problem for many is the messaging. Do you feel that the president hasn't got the communication right about exactly why he went into Iran in the first place, and also what the ultimate aim is?
Well, I think that President Trump views Iran as a long-term threat, and he's been on record for decades, literal decades, talking about this regime all the way back to really 1979. And so it's been something that he's clearly thought is a threat to not just American security and international security, but also the world writ large. And Donald Trump is working to remove that threat. There's no question. Now, as it turns out, when it comes to the specific end state, I think he's always in a negotiating standpoint. And he said, even when I've had the opportunity to ask him questions about this, he's always said that he's not going to reveal his final goals until that moment.
So, as far as you're concerned, despite the criticism from some of his most ardent supporters, he's not in trouble?
Well, I wouldn't say it that way at all. I would say that there is certainly he's in the middle of things. He's in the middle of a fight. He's in the middle of a fight for national security. He's in the middle of a fight where he's putting a lot on the line. And that's exactly what Donald Trump always does. He swings, in the U.S., we'd say he swings for the fences, but it's certainly high risk, but also high reward.
OK, we'll leave it there. Jack Posobiec, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. God bless.
Well, let's bring in our US correspondent, Mark Stone, to get his thoughts on what we've just heard. What do you think? Is Donald Trump losing his base, Mark?
No, I don't think he is, not at the moment. I mean, yes, you're right that some high-profile right-wing commentators are pretty dismayed about what's going on. But when you drill down into the real base, not the celebrity base, but the real base, I think it's clear, and I was in Texas last week looking into this, that if they don't quite necessarily follow the logic of why Trump is doing this, given that he said he was going to stop wars, not start them, that he wanted the Nobel Peace Prize and all the rest of it, they may not follow the logic, but they're willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, give him a free pass on this, because his credit with his base is so high. He has, as far as they're concerned, delivered on everything that he said he would. Domestic policy, absolutely delivered. And so They're willing to give him a free pass for now. I asked people down in Texas, what about oil prices? Temporary, they said, which is mimicking precisely what the administration has said. Your previous guest just there was talking about boots on the ground. That, I think, could be a turning point. If this becomes a mission creep, an exercise in mission creep, where we see, boots on the ground, or even before that, ships going through the Strait of Hormuz, some of them getting hit potentially by drones, mission creep one after the other, then I think the base might get a little bit more uneasy. But right now, they're with him.
You mentioned the Strait of Hormuz there. We heard from Scott Bessent a little earlier in the programme talking about the possibility of military escorts. How feasible is that? Are you getting any sort of timeline?
Well, it's going to happen, I think, and we know that the G7 leaders who spoke yesterday, all of them together, including President Trump and Scott Bessent, was on that phone call in the Oval Office yesterday. They all collectively agreed that some sort of military coalition would be provided at the right moment that would escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz. But as I said, that is an element of mission creep. Scott Bessent told Wilf that it was all part of the plan. Well, I mean, I think that's a bit of a stretch. It was clearly part of a plan if Plan A wasn't working out, and Plan A clearly isn't quite working out, which is why putting ships in to escort civilian vessels is Plan B. I guess Plan C, D, E. What is that? Is it boots on the ground? But as I said, it's full of risk. If you have got navies of the UK, France, the United States and others in this shipping lane, they are going to be at risk of being hit by mines. Yes, but even more dangerous is drones. And there is every indication that the Iranians still have a huge number of drones in their stocks, kamikaze drones. Just one of those drones has to hit one ship, and then we're in a whole different scenario.
Indeed. Mark in Washington for the moment. Thank you very much. You're watching The World. Coming up next, Israel intensifies its bombing campaign and is threatening an invasion in the south of Lebanon following more strikes by Hezbollah.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
Hello again. Now let's turn our attention next to Lebanon, where Israel has intensified its bombing campaign and is threatening an invasion in the south of the country after strikes by Hezbollah. The Lebanese Health Ministry says 8 people were killed at Beirut's Corniche seafront, where hundreds have been seeking shelter after leaving their homes. Cordelia Lynch has been speaking to some of those who survived.
Israel bombards Beirut. These the most intense strikes since the war began. Dahiyeh, Hezbollah's stronghold, smashed by rockets and drones. Now a mass of rubble. But this time, the city's central seafront was hit too. At least 8 people killed and 31 injured. Many were civilians who'd fled Dahiyeh and were sleeping on the streets. Just look at some of the damage here. You've got a motorbike totally ripped apart, and here a car with the windscreen completely smashed, covered in debris. And just in the distance there, you can see the tents where some of the displaced people were sleeping. They had fled the southern suburbs of Beirut under Israeli evacuation orders, and from the south of the country too. Eyewitnesses have described to us hundreds of people here suddenly woken by this massive blast. They say it was absolutely terrifying. Lots of children around, suddenly everyone running for their lives. And what's so significant about this attack, this is a very built-up area. You've got residential buildings, lots of hotels. This was a strike on the heart of Beirut. Zaid was hit by shrapnel, one of hundreds of people who came here for safety.
We were sleeping in the tent when we heard the first strike. We went out to see what was happening, and then the second strike hit. From there on, I couldn't tell what was happening because I was injured. Me and my wife and my daughter were all injured.
The IDF say they hit 70 terrorist targets across Lebanon overnight, but they didn't explain this attack on a beachfront packed with families. Riyadh was sleeping when he heard the booms.
There were 2 heavy strikes, 2 huge explosions. It was hard to comprehend.
They only came here because the Israeli army ordered them to evacuate. They thought this wide-open, popular promenade was their best hope. But in the early hours of the morning, they were suddenly hit.
It was like Armageddon. Before the strike, they had threatened Dahiyeh, so all the residents of Dahiyeh came here. The street on both sides was full of people, and when the 2 strikes happened, the streets emptied.
It is an attack on a much-loved landmark, where many people start and end their day. It is now a symbol of a dramatically expanding threat. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Beirut, Lebanon.
This is The World with me, Jonathan Samuels. Coming up, we'll have more about that displacement crisis in Lebanon, and we'll hear about how drones are now playing a deadly role in Sudan.
We're rolling. I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Welcome to the world.
Come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? This is the war game.
There were a number of armed security.
We want to discover, to find out what's really going on.
Everything you need to know about British politics in about 20 minutes.
I actually don't like political drama.
So, where next?
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Do you fear a 4th indictment? Does your government owe an apology to the British home children?
Great to see you.
Does your government owe them an apology? The fact that they were intercepted, does that indicate a military weakness on the part of Iran?
No, no, no.
Free, wherever you get your news. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. You can feel a devastating power. It had been a difficult night in a deadly storm.
Bang, bang. You can hear it hitting the windows.
Our houses are okay.
It's depressing.
As bad as all of this is, it could have been much worse. Today, this land they call sacred is at the heart of America's electric car revolution.
To me, it's a sacred ground.
The white gold rush is a race that Biden doesn't want to lose. I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world. Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States, it would appear is about to learn his fate.
Escort coming out!
San Quentin houses America's largest death row. They rarely allow cameras onto the condemned block.
James Matthews, Sky News. I want to be treated equally like everyone else.
It's one step closer to getting out, to getting off death row.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
We're diminished by claims that you're a racist.
Question?
Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding. What do you call him, sir?
He's from Sky News. He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of color, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Just want to bring you an update on an incident at a synagogue in Michigan earlier on this evening. A man who rammed his vehicle into the synagogue and drove through a hallway has been shot dead by security staff. Multiple law enforcement resources responded to the incident at Temple Israel in a prosperous suburb of the city. There were no serious casualties among those at the temple, which included a preschool and a family centre. Let's focus on the conflict in Sudan now, because after 3 years, the war there is evolving. Drone warfare has added dangerous depth to the humanitarian catastrophe. The safe delivery of aid and emergency response is now virtually impossible in some of the hardest hit areas, as our Africa correspondent Yusra El-Bagir now reports.
Sudan's war will soon hit 3 years of relentless armed violence, and instead of winding down, it is intensifying into a brutal trap. Drone attacks by the warring Rapid Support Forces and Sudanese military have surged as they battle for more territory. And civilians escaping the onslaught to neighboring countries are being caught in more conflict. And in some cases, even being deported back to Sudan as drone strikes pummel the population. The armed conflict location and event data, an independent global monitor, has documented at least 198 drone strikes in Sudan in just the first 2 months of 2026. At least 52 of them involved civilian casualties, killing 478 people. This military drone strike on a market killed 13 people, while this RSF drone targeted a university, with another hitting a humanitarian convoy, killing 3 aid workers. And just before the end of 2025, a triple drone strike by the RSF on a kindergarten and hospital in South Kordofan state claimed the lives of 114 people, including 43 children. This haunting cycle of violence feels never-ending, especially for civilians on the ground who have few safe options. The RSF is expanding its full control of Darfur, targeting border areas and rival militia territory. A United Nations fact-finding mission found that the paramilitary group Siege And capture of al-Fashir, the capital of North Darfur, had the hallmarks of genocide, with at least 6,000 people killed by the RSF in the city and surrounding areas in just 3 days. Survivors of the capture are scattered in camps all over Sudan, still facing the threat of drone strikes and worsening food insecurity as aid dwindles. This map shows the spread of drone strikes across the country, even hitting the border of neighboring Chad. Chad hosts close to 1 million Sudanese refugees and recently closed its borders with Sudan after multiple cross-border attacks by the RSF. Other neighboring countries like South Sudan and Ethiopia are dealing with the threat of their own civil wars and are increasingly unsafe for refugees. And Egypt, a key safe haven for Sudanese refugees, is now deporting them en masse. This video shared online shows the arrest of a Sudanese man by Egyptian authorities. We've been told by affected families that their status as asylum seekers with the United Nations Refugee Agency is often ignored, as their loved ones are detained and deported. 18-year-old An-Nazir As-Sadiq was one of the victims. He died in an Egyptian detention center. His friends tell us he was arrested from this neighborhood in Cairo and that 3 of the young men with him were deported. His parents have now returned to Sudan for their own safety, after living in daily fear of detention, deportation, or death in Egypt. The Sudanese embassy in Cairo says close to 600 Sudanese nationals were deported back to their war-torn home from Egypt in December and January. And that number is rapidly rising as the crackdown on vulnerable Sudanese refugees continues. We approached the Egyptian government for comment, but they didn't respond. And here in the UK, the Home Secretary's emergency ban on study visas for students from Afghanistan, Myanmar, Cameroon and Sudan to slow asylum claims has meant that Sudan's best and brightest minds, at least 220 Sudanese students, are being prevented from pursuing scholarships to some of the UK's best universities. At least 22 of them were meant to study at the University of Oxford. 39 of them were accepted in a UK government-funded scholarship for emerging leaders. This is Khartoum, the embattled capital city that Sudanese people are left with. Some of them deported and others have returned willingly, rebuilding what they can as drones silently stalk from the skies, threatening more destruction.
Just want to bring you some breaking news now regarding the situation in Iran. We're hearing from the US military saying that an aircraft has gone missing over western Iraq. The US military saying it's aware of a loss of a refuelling aircraft in friendly airspace. Just a bit more here from US Central Command saying 2 aircraft were involved in the incident. One of the aircraft went down in western Iraq. The second landed safely. Mark Stone, our US correspondent, is in Washington for us. Mark, what more are you hearing?
Well, you pretty much said it there, Jonathan. We've got a little bit more detail that is just coming in from Tampa, which is the headquarters of Central Command, Tampa, Florida. And they are saying at this stage that this was not due to hostile fire or friendly fire. 2 aircraft involved. One is a KC-135. That is a large refueling aircraft. It looks to non-experts like a civilian plane, effectively. It's a Boeing jet, very, very large, probably has a crew of around about 6 people. Including the pilot and co-pilot. That is the aircraft that is missing. The other aircraft, they haven't said what it is, but that landed safely, we're told, in western Iraq. It's probable that that second aircraft was a fighter jet that was being refueled by the plane that is now missing. So not, we're told, as a result of hostile fire or friendly fire, but nevertheless, these would have been 2 aircraft heavily involved in the operation in Iran, and it's an illustration of the risks associated with this mission that the Americans and the Israelis are undertaking, and clearly huge concern now for the crew on board that KC-135, which is missing, and we're told that rescue efforts in Iraq, we assume, are underway.
Yes, Mark, just stay where you are, if you would, for the moment. The latest from US Central Command. It is aware of the loss of that US KC-135 refuelling aircraft, the incident occurring in friendly airspace during Operation Epic Fury. Rescue efforts are ongoing. 2 aircraft, we understand, were involved in the incident. One of the aircraft, as you were saying, went down in western Iraq. The second landed safely due not to hostile fire or indeed friendly fire. Still waiting to find out the real cause of what has happened there. And as we've been discussing on the programme, Mark, of course, the situation in Iran, Donald Trump making this huge decision well over a week ago now to bomb Iran is going to have massive repercussions amongst Americans. Many, of course, who are saying back to him, hang on a minute, President, you're the man who, when you were elected, promised we would not go to war, we would not get involved in the Middle East.
Yeah, and his response to that, which has come in various forms over the past week, is that peace is peace through strength. He's repeating that phrase again and again, and clearly when you kind of drill down into what that means, he will argue that it requires and it means taking risks, and risks come with danger, of course. But you're right. If, as and when, and I think he has set the American people up to expect that there will be more casualties, American service people who are killed as a consequence of this. As and when that happens, the risk is that he will lose support among his base, which, as we were talking about earlier, it remains for the time being strong. In terms of what happened here, I mean, as we said, what it looks as though, and I'm speculating here as we wait for more details, but what it looks as though probably happened is this was a mid-air refueling accident. You've probably seen, but people are probably familiar with the way this works, but it's extraordinary. You have this huge tanker aircraft with a hose out of the back of it. The fighter jets come alongside, and then they're refueled mid-air. It's a very, very skilled operation, but it's clearly fraught with risk as well. And it may well be that is what happened, that one of these mid-air refueling processes went wrong, and one of the aircraft, the larger refueling aircraft, is missing. Rescue efforts underway, we're told, and another aircraft, presumably but not confirmed to be a fighter jet, landed safely in western Iraq.
Yeah, indeed. I've been in one of those refuelling aircraft and seen firsthand how delicate that operation is. And quite often they miss the hose the first time or even the second time because the aircraft have to fly so close together. I mean, it is remarkable to watch. Let's just read that CENTCOM statement once again for people joining us. You can see it on your screen. Just there, US Central Command is aware of the loss of a US KC-135 refuelling aircraft. The incident occurred in friendly airspace during Operation Epic Fury, and rescue efforts are ongoing. 2 aircraft were involved in the incident. One of the aircraft went down in western Iraq, and the second landed safely. This was not due to hostile fire or indeed friendly fire, and obviously a rescue operation ongoing in western Iraq for the crew of that aircraft. Just remind us, Mark, how many American military personnel have lost their lives so far in this campaign?
It's 7, I believe, that have died. Only by they've died as a consequence of Iranian drones and missiles that have hit American air bases. There were a couple of friendly fire incidents right at the beginning of this conflict 10 days or so ago. They were I think it was 2 American jets shot down by Kuwaiti air defense, but in both those cases, the American pilots ejected and were safe. I'm just looking at the detail of this particular plane. It's a very old plane. The KC-135 has been in operation since 1957. But the scale of the operation that the Americans are currently undertaking in the Gulf, in the Middle East, is so huge that it was clear to us as we watched this sort of maritime armada and Air Force gathering in the Middle East, it was clear that they were throwing everything at this. So a huge number of aerial and maritime assets, including aircraft, that some of which date back quite some time. It's got a very good safety record over many years. It hasn't been hasn't been an accident with one for many, many years. But as you say, these refueling, mid-air refueling, is fraught with risk.
Yeah, Mark, thank you very much for the moment. Tend to have 3 crew on board, a pilot, a co-pilot and also a boom operator who controls that refuelling arm that you spoke of. Mark in Washington, thank you very much indeed. Just a reminder then of the breaking news this hour. The US military says a refuelling aircraft has gone down in western Iraq. Rescue efforts are underway. A second aircraft landed safely. Those details coming from CENTCOM. It's a US KC-135 refuelling aircraft happened in friendly airspace. Plenty more detail top of the hour.